Let's see, it's right around the 8th of January. My name's Dean Cummings. I've been dealing with something I uncovered and has become a massive situation that we realized has affected a lot of people. So I'm just trying to take little bites at a time to share certain points of this case, this situation, this circumstance. So this one is about Active Interest Media. This is a company that does publications, outdoor publications, owns many publications that go out into different industries, skiing, um, climbing, hiking, yachting, four-wheeling. I don't know, they have a lot of them, RV and yacht or RV and trailer, etc. So I met a guy by the name of Alan Crolius. He was the president of Ski and Skiing Magazine, and I started doing business with the guy. And they would come up, and they would come up heli skiing after we did a trade together. And I would buy a certain number of ads in the magazine, and they would provide me extra ads for trade in heli skiing. So I would give them a discounted trips for 10 people, and then I would give them 5 free trips. They're worth about, I don't know, back then they were worth about $5,000 or $6,000 a piece. And Al Crolius would come up every year with a big group and have a good time, and I did this for a number of years. Then all of a sudden, I noticed he was kind of squaring me off against one of my competitors. This competitor actually was a client of mine. His name was Kevin Quinn. He's got some roots back in Lake Forest, Illinois, but also grew up, I think, in Anchorage. He was on top of a peak with me one time, and he asked me, "Hey, Mr. Cummings, why aren't you doing heli skiing out of Cordova, Alaska?" And I let him know that a district ranger had told me that until there's a permit, an EA is performed and a permit becomes available, that we know heli skiing out of Cordova and the mountains surrounding Cordova, Alaska. So I just took that verbatim, respected it, ended up winning a permit for heli skiing anyway on the Forest Service. That wasn't exactly the area surrounding Cordova, but it was the best terrain in the world, really. So I was pretty fortunate to win this terrain. So Al Crolius with Skiing Magazine faced us off together, and basically I had a contract to do a film segment in a Warren Miller Entertainment film, and it was a done deal. It was verbally communicated that we agreed we were going to do it together, and he ended up shopping it off to Points North. And I was like, "What do you mean Points North? There's no company in Cordova, Alaska. There's no permit. There's no terrain. It's 100% surrounded by Forest Service. What's this guy going to do down in Cordova? Start a company?" Well, Al Crolius, an Active Interest Media, put his arm around him and said, "We'll go and film out there. Even if it's trespassing, we'll film massive segments and make your company, start your company off. Just pay us a bunch of extra money." I couldn't imagine that they would pull this off and that it would last, but they did. So Warren Miller Entertainment, owned by Active Interest Media, filmed on the Forest Service on non-permitted terrain for, I think, 16 segments. At least the majority of them were on federal lands without authorization. Points North got cited multiple times. So did Warren Miller Entertainment. And at the end of the day, they were using the footage and sharing it across the world as if this is terrain that you could buy a heli ski trip and go enjoy this terrain. But that's not the case. It was peddling fiction, because it was just smoke and mirrors. You could see this amazing terrain where they would go film and document a film segment for the movie, but it wasn't an area you, as a client, you weren't actually able to go there unless it was trespassing. Not the biggest deal in the world. There's a lot of terrain in Alaska. I respect that, I don't own all the lands, and I don't expect to own all the lands. But if I'm going to administer a permit and work really hard to follow the rules of a permit, I would like to see that other companies don't have to earn it the same way I did. And it's definitely almost mafia style for Al Crolius to be pinning two people off against one another over over a heli ski business. So that's what he did. So that was my first introduction to this guy, Al Crolius. He then came back around, started flying with me again with some trades in the magazine. And in 2009, Al Crolius pulled probably the slyest move with my wife, with my director of operations, Aaron Caritis, and with a guy named David Rath. He was the president of Evergreen Helicopters at the time. And a volcano went off in Alaska called Mount Redoubt. And I was guiding, big days. I was working probably 15, 16-hour days guiding every single day. We were running 3 helicopters on contract.
What year was this? 2009?
2009.
Okay.
I was running large number of groups. I used to run really large numbers. I was running, let's see, I probably had 10 groups, 5 people per group, and a private. So we had the lodge pretty full and we were pretty busy. And so my time was being demanded for guiding and running operations and as being the lead guide. So I come in, Mount Redoubt's going off. It's about 400 miles away from where we live and where we guide in the Chugach Range in Valdez, Alaska. The ash isn't blowing toward Valdez. The ash isn't blowing toward Anchorage to the International Airport. And I come into a meeting with Aaron Caritis, Karen Stokes Cummings, and they're like, Dean, the International Airport's going to be closed for 8 days, 6 days. And I'm like, really? It's hard for me to believe. I looked at the ash models. It doesn't look like it's going toward the International Airport in Anchorage. Oh no, Al Crolius is stuck. He can't get to Valdez, Alaska. He can't even get into Anchorage. I couldn't have walked 4 feet out of the door and my phone rang and it's Al Crolius. I'm like, hey Al. And he goes by Big Al. He likes to be called Big Al. That should have been a red flag from the get-go. He goes, hey buddy, hey Dino, my buddy. So he's calling me buddy. Hey, we're stuck. We can't make it to Alaska. What do you mean, Al? It's not that bad. The airport's running. I noticed some flights came in today from Anchorage to Valdez. No, we're stuck. We can't get there. We can't get there till Friday. I'm like looking at my calendar. I'm like, it's Sunday. I go, really, Al? If you can't get here till Friday, your trip ends on Saturday, the next day. I'm like, well, I just got a briefing from Karen and Aaron, and they're telling me the same thing. If that's the case, Al, we can just cancel your trip. I mean, all due respect, I want to be honest and fair with you. Oh yeah, I said, thanks buddy, that's great. So it turns out the International Airport was only closed for 24 hours. They claimed all of this in 12 hours into a 24-hour closure. I wake up the next day, my wife and my director of operations are, Dean, we can't afford to keep the other 2 helicopters on contract. I'm like, what are you talking about? And sure enough, I pulled up my bank accounts and things looked tight. There was no reason for the banks to look tight. And, me being operational guy and doing all the guiding, my brain is 100% focusing on snow stability and weather and flight operations and which guides should go out with which groups and who should follow who and taking care of the client's safety and the helicopter operations of fueling, the flight following, all of that. So I've been running that way for years. There was no reason why I shouldn't be able to trust my wife, my business partner.
Who was in control of looking at the finances at that point and through most of your career?
Yeah, so the